example that we all have dealt with is that day we finally got to drive a car. Now the one I started driving on, it had a clutch and a manual shift. They didn't have many automatics back in those days. Anyway, I was, I felt pretty green. You got to push on the clutch, let off on the gas, you got to shift gear, then let's see, let off on the, put the gas on, and I had to remember how to do all that stuff. And about, honestly, you could have asked me. In 3 days, I was the best driver there ever was in McMinnville, Tennessee. I mean, I would have told you, there ain't nobody can drive better than me. But was that the truth? No. I just thought it was. Same is true with operating the machine. It's going to be easy for you. After 2 or 3 days, you're going to say, this is no problem at all. I can handle this. But please develop good techniques. Now, as we go into this, there's our controls now. As we go through, it'll reference you to the controls of which, how to go to. But we have condensed all this part of the manual here and put it over here. So we condensed all this stuff and just highlighted the 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Now, when you want to come back and get a little deeper into it and why and all that, then you can come back to the manual and I would really, really love for you to use that chart. Those first 2 or 3 or 4 days you operate the machine. Because after 4 days, you're not going to look at the chart anyway. You click, 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 click. You got it ready, and away we go. But if you do it backwards, you'll be doing it backwards from now on. So please, and we even say during the operation, if Dad's in there running the machine, running the tool, and you happen to walk out to the machine, you could look at these and see if these values are somewhat in the ballpark of what we expect. And looking at the gauges, And then even the shutdown procedure is just as important as the rest of it. Yeah, I'm driving down the highway at 70 miles an hour, and I see a gas station. If I reach over and turn the key off, I'd probably stop. And if I didn't lock up my steering wheel, I could probably drive right over in there. Now, some people stop the machine exactly the same way. Full bore, running full bore, and reach over and turn the key off. Oh, that's not the way to stop a machine. A car or a machine. But, yep, I see it done too often. So, you see, good procedures, learning them in the beginning will be with you from now on. Okay. I'll get my little old skinny book out of your way here. Okay, we're moving it right along. Now, we're coming into our first major section that I wanted to talk about. Remember I talked about in the very beginning, I had 4 things: agitation, emulsification, heating, and recovery. First one we're going to talk about is our water pressure system. How the water pressure system works, why it works, how it works, and even a little service and maintenance as we go along. Now, are we going to use this? Read this? No, I'm going to be telling you about it. I'm not going to make you read all this stuff. The only thing that I do want you to do is to look at the page open. Let's see what I pictured was open. Is this page right here. Now, what I'm going to do, hang on just a sec while I grab something. And the way the thing works. First off, you're not getting a auxiliary water holding tank?
Not on this installation.
Not on this, okay. Then this diagrams will be exactly like it's drawn out here. So we got to have some water to begin with, and if you'll notice back on your bottom right-hand corner of the sheet, there's a valve that looks something like this. Now, the only thing missing here is a 50-foot or whatever length of garden hose you may need to get to your customer's water faucet. But anyway, you notice the thing is turned off now, And anytime the log is across the river, the water can't flow, and when it's in line with the river, the water can flow. That's how, we got about 3 or 4 of these type valves on the machine, and a lot of people, which one is closed, which one is open? That's my Tennessee way of telling you it'll flow or it won't flow. But anyway, once you get to your customer's house and you know that you've hooked up to a live water faucet, always turn it on first to make sure that somebody didn't turn it off inside the house. You don't run your pump dry or anything. For people to turn it on just for a minute, just to make sure that I didn't pull a kink in the hose behind the bush or whatever. Yes, I do have water. Okay, turn it back off, and then attach it to the machine like so. Now, once you get it attached, go ahead and turn it on and leave it on. You don't have to worry about turning it on or off. You're in, you're ready to go, and you're supplying water to the machine. Now, if we go back to our spot on our diagram, what do we do with that? We fill up a little tank there. Do you see that little water? We call it a water holding. It's the water holding tank that you'll see. If I turn this machine around just a little more, it's this tank we see right here. The guy 2 days ago said, "Oh, the toolbox?" Yep, the toolbox. Looked like a toolbox. So we got there by talking about it a little. Yeah. Now, it's just like that in your bathroom. Your commode, tank behind it. How does it fill? It fills till the float says stop. When does it begin again? As soon as you open it up and the float begins to drop, it fills back up. It stays full all of the time. So again, there's our water holding tank, and we have a float control in there and it can be adjusted 2 ways. It's got a rod, just like you do in the bathroom. When it overflows or it won't turn off, what do you do with the one in the bathroom? You bend the rod down. But there's also, on that valve, there's a little wing nut and ratchet with a little ratchet type thing. I can readjust it that way. But I know how 99.9% of us adjust that is by bending the rod. You don't have to. You can readjust the thing as well. So now I have a reservoir of water for this pump to draw from. The pump is this thing sitting up here with a pulley on it and a belt at the very top of the machine. It's indicated by P4. What is it, P4 on your diagram? Okay. Now we're going to get into the pump in just a little bit, but what we'll excuse me. Before we get there, we're going to find out how we get to the pump. So we're going to follow the road map. Now, by the way, this pump has the ability to suck fluids or water out of that tank, just like you'd suck soda through a straw. That simple. And I'll show you the action of the pump in just a couple of minutes. But anyway, on the backstroke of the plunger on the pump, on the backstroke, it's just like a syringe. It sucks water into the pump. Let's find out the route. We come out. We have a reservoir. We come out with a hose, and we go into an elbow, and we go into a block. We call it the cluster block. If we look at that cluster block and the way it's drawn out, it looks like there's 2 cavities in there. Notice it's drilled out almost halfway up, but not quite. It's drilled almost halfway down, but not quite. See the little dotted line in there? This is indicated by something like this. There's a cavity drilled in the bottom, and there's a cavity, and the 2 don't meet. This is a suction or negative pressure cavity. This is a high pressure cavity up here. But since we can't go anyplace much, only place we can go is up through the block and out through. By the way, notice there's numbers. There's numbers on that block. What's the very bottom number? Number 7 is the most important number you'll ever remember on this machine. Number 7 is how I can force feed it, how I can flush it, because there's a quick connect right at the elbow. And I could take my garden hose and I could hitch it directly to that and force water into the pump if I needed to do that. I can look for leaks. I'll use it for troubleshooting. I'll use it for emergency procedures. And we'll talk about that a little more as we go along, but notice there is a quick connect at that point. And it's the very same type of connectors I have here, meaning this will fit up there as well. Okay, now to get out of that block, we really don't want to try to go this way. The only way we can really go is out through a filter. Everybody with me? Through a filter and a hose going up to the pump. Does anybody have any problems at all getting from this tank through this cavity and up to the, coming up through here, come out through there to the filter, and then up to the pump, okay? Now there's two things this system will not tolerate. One of them is an air leak in this system. If there's any component along the way, any hose, any connector, anything along the way that you can suck air through, down goes your pressure. This has got to be absolutely foolproof, no air leaks. That's the reason I can come over sometimes and pressurize the system with city water pressure and look for leaks. See, I told you we could use number 7 for troubleshooting as well. Okay, now, we're now to the pump, and now I'm going to show you how the basic idea of how a pump works. So I'm going to lay this one down for now. I may come back to it in a minute. I'm going to grab 2 items off of the card over here. The pump that you have on that is called a 5 CP pump, and it looks, well, if we hadn't cut away 2/3 of it, it looked like this. The only reason I'm going to show you the other one, somehow in the process of laying this around, the valves came up missing. But a 3 CP works exactly the same way, only it's just a little smaller on a different machine. But anyway, the way this thing works, and let's turn it around so everybody can see it. Yeah, this thing pulls water in from here. Now that's kind of like this hose coming into this area right here. Now, if this pump is turning at maybe 1,200, if this thing is operating maybe 1,200 times a minute, and the way everybody can understand this very best, I think, is related to something we're all familiar with, like a syringe, a hypodermic syringe or something. All of us know when a nurse sticks that needle into the bottle and pulls back on that plunger, we all know exactly what's going to happen. Well, here's the nurse, and she's pulling back on the plunger, and it's sucking, and the way it does it, it sucks this inlet valve open. It sucks this inlet valve open and allows the red chamber to be filled with water. Okay, now that's what the nurse, how she fills this syringe to give you the shot. Okay, now, as this shaft turns, as it rotates, you'll notice all of a sudden now it starts back. Guess what's going to happen to this valve? Hello. Good. You're in for... Okay, you asked the question. What did you? Yeah. It looked like it's only a little thimbleful of water, right? But remember, there's 3 of these, each one doing its own thing in its own time. So I'm just playing with 1/3 of the pump right here. There's 3 of these plungers in the pump, and they work on a crankshaft just like this one. And when one is doing one thing, the other is doing something else. So anyway, they're all timed and they work just like the pistons or the cylinders in your automobile. So we'll play with just one pulse or one cylinder. And that's a good question, guys. Here's the little question that, and it's not the first time that's been asked. That's a good question. A lady one time says, "Henry, that's only a thimbleful of water." I said, "That's about right." How many times is that doing it per minute now? 1,200. Now, but there's 3 of them.
Each one of them is doing it 1,200 times a minute?
So, let's see, if I did 1,200 and I do another 12, what's that about? 3,600 thimbles. Now, ma'am, I'm going to go out and get a 5-gallon bucket of water, and I'm going to get a thimble. I want you to dump me out 3,600 thimbles full of water. And tell me how much it is. She said, Henry, exactly 5 gallons. And she got the point right away. So if it does it enough times, it will move. And it does move approximately 5 gallons a minute. We're not going to use 5 gallons a minute. We'll find out what we do with the excess. But that's a good question. I like the way you thought about that. That's only a little bit of water. It is, but it does it a lot of
It's
times.
going so fast, they say we'll keep the water flow constant.
Yep, exactly. You got it. Unless you was using it too much, but again, the way the equipment was designed, we're only going to use them. If we carpet clean, we only be using about 1.5 gallons to 1.6 gallons a minute, or somewhere in that ballpark of. But it's capable of 5. I'm only using 1.5 gallons, so I have plenty of reserve left over. Okay, so now that's the basic idea of how the pump works. You see how it sucks it in on the back stroke, sucks it in on the forward stroke, pushes it out through the other valve because the valve closes. Now there's two things that's very, very important about these pumps. 2 lubricants. One is oil in the bottom half, and there's a window over here, a little window with a red dot.
Yeah.
We pour oil in until it comes up adjacent to the red dot. We use a special cat pump oil for that. We've been using it for 35 years. It's a good oil. It seems to work really great. Is there a substitute? Yes, but I don't like to use them because I don't never know for sure what I'm putting in. There's one other lubricant. This little ceramic plunger is popping backwards and forth at 1,200 times a minute. If there's no water in this pump, guess what? It's going to get hot and it's going to do the seals in on your pump. Do I have a good pump? Yes, yeah, you got a good pump, but you wore out the seals. And in that case, you're out a good number of dollars buying a seal kit, and you're down another 3 hours of repairing the pump. So try your best not to run the pump dry. The rule of thumb is if you turn on the pump switch and you don't get any pressure right away, it's a good idea to stop and think about it and see if something's missing and see if, I don't have the water connected. Yes, there's an air leak or I left something undone. We'll talk about some of that as we go along, some more things in that area. But that's the basic idea of the pump and how it works. Now, we haven't gotten very far in this system yet, but we're going to work it on up. Now, if we pull in 5 gallons of fluid, it could be soap and water, it could be water alone, but if we pull in 5 gallons, by golly, how much are we going to push out? 5 gallons, right? Now, if I take it out, you'll see the little checkerboarded hose coming out of the thing, going back down to this cluster block again. Okay, turn it this way. So I'm pushing 5 gallons back into this block, and it can only get out one way right now. It can only get out one way. But I want to stop for a minute and say, let's talk about that emulsification or soap solutions mixed with the water at this point. We want to find out how this other fluid gets mixed with the water. Now notice on your diagram, there's another tank that's mentioned. That's up in the top left-hand corner of your page. Everybody see that tank up there? And that'd be this one right here. That's the one that you have filled with your special solution of whatever type of product you want to use there. Now, to get out of that thing, if I come out of that tank, by the way, there's a little shut-off valve and a little quick disconnect here, and I can come out and come down the page. Notice the black hose with the white arrows inside of it. Comes down, and we go through a meter. And by the way, you notice it comes right in that bottom chamber of this block again. You got number 7 and number 6. Notice this block is numbered. Notice on your diagram, on this block, there's numbers there. It's amazing. I've had guys that has operated these machines for years and years and years and years and never had any problems. One day, we're doing a little troubleshooting. I said, go to number 7 on the cluster. Number what? I said, go, you know your cluster? Yeah, they're right above the water holding. Yeah, it's right back there, right above the water holding tank. And they go, oh, it is numbered. They've had it for years and they haven't even noticed it. Well, it's good. It's that they haven't had to use it. But still, they're on there for a good reason, because when we are trying to help you troubleshoot your machine, we might be having you to go to a specific number on that cluster block to help us troubleshoot. And 99.9% of the time we can get it done. We're pretty good at getting you going when the machine does break. Will it ever break? Of course, at some time something's going to break on it. How often? Not very often, I don't expect, but it's a piece of equipment made by human beings, and if they wear out, and they do break too occasionally. Another way that I like to explain this system right here is this. If I'm sitting here at the table and I have a glass of Coca-Cola here and I have a straw or a glass of water, let's say I've got a glass of water and I have a straw. Does anybody know how to get that? Babies even know how to get that liquid, how to get that liquid out of that glass. They suck it out with a straw. You see the pump sucking that out with the straw? Excuse me. Well, now I got 2 glasses sitting on the table. One of them I have water in it, the other I have Coca-Cola in it. Now, if I fabricated myself a fork and straw and I sucked on it, what would I get? Cherry Coke. Huh? What if I said the cherry Coke was a little strong now? I don't like this. Thank you. I got a cough drop in my pocket too. I may use it. What if I said the cherry flavoring is a little stronger than I like? What would I do about it? And with my 2-straw system, I'd pinch one my cherry straw part be way shut, wouldn't it? Well, I think I could reach up here and shut my cherry flavoring down somewhat, or open it up if I wanted more. I can control the amount of cherry flavoring that I'm putting with my Coca-Cola or water. It could be water, Coke, whatever product you want to use, but I like to use maybe Coca-Cola and cherry flavoring is a good way. Everybody can drink cherry Coke somewhere down the line, probably. But do you see how I can control the amount of solution I'm putting with my water at this point? Is any problem at all in getting water and getting soap solution into my pump at this point? Everybody see that? It's pretty simple, really. But if there's a hang up or some little something I kind of messed up on, be sure to holler at me here. Okay, now how much fluids is being pulled into that pump per minute now? 3,600 thimbles full, or about 5 gallons. That's the reason when you read your data sheet, you hear somebody, oh, it's a 5-gallon pump. That's where it comes from. Okay. So if we pulled in 5, we're going to push out 5. Where does it go? Give me a number on your cluster block. Number 1, okay. Goes into the cluster at number 1 at the very top. Okay, we're doing good. Now I'm going to do something, like I told you I might do on these if you want to do it, but I wouldn't do it in my book. But if I want to come over here and look at this block for a minute, I might come along and say, I'm going to block off number 2, that's number 2, right? And that's number 3, right? I'm going to block them off and say there's no holes in that block right now. Now, there's only one place the water can get out at. What's that number? 9. Number 9, okay. If I follow the route out of number 9, where does it go? I'm going to make you guys talk to me while I'm getting my breath back here. Number 9 goes out through. Okay. It goes out through it's called a water flow switch, but it really doesn't make water flow. It doesn't keep it from flowing. It just goes, that's screwed right into number 9 on that cluster. Number 9 is something like that. Yeah, number 9. Okay. Now, number 9 it's called a water flow switch. A lot of people are, well, that'll keep my water from not flowing, or it'll make it flow or won't flow. No, it doesn't have anything at all to do with water flowing or not flowing. It just says, it tells the heater circuits later on, it's going to tell the heater circuits a little later on that water is flowing or it is not flowing out of that point. That's the only thing the water flow switch does. I'm getting ahead of myself because that's in the heater circuits, but I just want you to know that we come out of this thing, we go through the water flow switch, and we go down to the heater coils. Now those heater coils look like that big thing on the end of the card over there. There's one that's been pulled out. They're inside, technically they're inside of this black barrel that you see here. So if I took those coils out of that, that's what they would look like. If I pull the coils out of this black barrel. So I go around and around and around through maybe 125 feet of steel tube where there may or may not be any fire or heat required. For right now, we don't care about heat because we're not worried about heating. We just want to follow the route out. Okay, so we come out, we come through the heater coils, and we come into a block. There's a big old heater output cluster block that's attached to that to the heater coils. Everybody see that? Now the only thing that happens there is, at this point in our heater circuits, we want to measure the temperature as quickly as we can as it comes out of the coils. You can't get inside the firebox. You can't get inside the roaring inferno to measure temperature. You burn up all your leads and equipment. So about 2 or 3 inches outside of those coils, we have this big brass block that's hollowed out, and we have our sensors into that block to measure the temperature as quickly as we possibly can once it comes out of the heater coils. But for the top of the page to a valve that you see up at the top, if this valve is turned to the off position, I have plugged up that line, and there's no place in the world for the water to go. It can't go right, it can't go left, it can't go any place, but it will sit there and maintain or retain whatever amount of pressure you may see on your gauge up here. Okay, at this point, we kind of say this route to your right goes no place if this valve is in the off position. So we're going to leave it off for right now. Okay, now remember, we're pushing how much water? 5 gallons. We got it all the way down into this block, and we're coming out, and we're going to pretend that we have our wand hooked up to this. How big is that little tiny hole in that wand? Broom straw size? About that. A number 3 jet. How much water has to go through that? 5 gallons. How much pressure does it take to push 5 gallons through a hole that tiny? I don't know, and I don't think any of us know. We know, except it's phenomenal. It would be thousands and thousands of pounds of pressure would be required to push that much water out of that hole. So we can't live that way. We just flat can't live that way because we'd be well, we would have blown the machine up before that. We would have blown hoses right off the machine because they aren't equipped to take 5,000 pounds of pressure and all that good stuff. So we can't live that way. So we got to figure out now, what do we got to do to make this thing work? How are we going to regulate our pressure? And that's the reason I blocked off those 2 numbers here on your block, number 2 and number 3. I blocked them off over here and said that you can't get, but now we can. We can get out of one of those. We're going to leave. We're going to open up. We're going to leave the number 2 blocked off yet. We're going to leave number 2 blocked off momentarily. That only leaves me one route out of that. That'd be the number 3 route. If I block off number 2, and the way I blocked off number 2 was by doing this, by putting this to the high position. Remember, if this valve can go all the way up, all the way down, but stop in the middle, water can't go this way, nor can it go this way. If you'll notice, that valve and this valve down here are exactly alike. I can go all the way right, I can go all the way left. If I stop in the middle, it can't go either route. So, by the way, those 2 valves are alike. So, on this one a little bit ago, if I can't go to solution fill or warm up, I can't go anyplace. If I go to high over here, I can't go to medium, or I can't go to low. Therefore, I'm left with only one route out. There we go. Are we okay now? Everybody with me up to now? Okay. That leaves me one regulator in the system. If I'm on number 2, if I've knocked out C7 and what's this C number down here? C10. If I've knocked out C7 and C10, what regulator do I have left? This is at the bottom, right? Okay, C13 is it? 32. Now C32. Okay, I have C32 left. Now, this thing may be set for, let's just say it's set for 1500 psi. And that's about what it may be set for 14, 13, 1400 pounds of pressure. And we can set it any place we want it, but we'll set it pretty high for perhaps pressure washing. Okay, now, that thing is pushing really hard here. The springs in this regulator is pushing really hard, but it can only push so hard. It's only capable of pushing so hard. We don't want to shut it all the way off. If we did, we'd be back to where we were a minute ago. We would build a monster that we couldn't live with. But this thing will go up to 1500 psi pressure, this regulator will. Okay, now if I cause, and please bear in mind the values that I give you are ballpark figures. They're not exactly right down to the nitty-gritty, but they're real close, and it makes it easier for us to understand it. If I have this thing set at about 1500 psi, now instead of pushing through this tool out here a little while ago, we had that little broom straw size hole, and it took maybe 5,000 or 6,000 pounds of pressure to push that much water through there. But I don't have that much now. I have it set at 1500 psi. I'm going to put out about 2.5 gallons a minute. And again, don't nail it down to the nth degree, but it's close. It will cause this wand to put out about 2.5 gallons of water a minute. Okay, now, I caused about 2.5 gallons of water a minute to be blown from this top part of this cluster. The pump says, how much is it needing now? It needs 5 gallons, right? But I lost 2.5. How much soap and water does it have to pull in to be happy again? 2.5, okay? It pulled in 2.5, and the 2.5 that you use is still 5 gallons a minute. Pump is just as happy as it can be because it's got just exactly what it needs. Now, everything is going really, really good. I got my wand, or got this high pressure gun that I'm using on high pressure going. I'm putting out 2.5 gallons a minute. I pulled in 2.5 gallons of soap and water. The pump is happy. All of a sudden, you turn this wand off. Turn it off. Now, I may have failed to mention something about this bypass here a minute ago. If I used 2.5, 2.5 was being bypassed, and so 2.5 it put in. I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. The 2.5 would be if I turn the one. If I turn the one completely off, I'll be bypassing 5 because I'm not using any out here. If I turn my one completely off, my bypass regulator will bypass all of it. But if I would go back and say, now open the one is using 2.5, it bypassed 2.5, and 2.5 still equals 5. Are you with me? I said it kind of backwards a minute ago. I may have confused everybody. Did I? You with me? Everybody with me? Okay. Yeah, that's what I failed to mention a minute ago. When I was using 2.5, I still had 2.5 that was bypassed. So 2.5 is not enough, so it needs another 2.5 to equal 5. I forgot to mention that your regulator was by. But now if I turn the wand off, it's bypassing all of it. And it bypasses all of it, picks it back up, the wand is still off. See the dog chasing its tail around the flagpole there, around and around. Now under high pressure, this water will begin to get hot. And the reason I'm mentioning this is you're cleaning away and you lay, I don't care whether it's pressure washing or carpet cleaning, you lay your wand down, you're not using any, you're bypassing all of it. So if you're bypassing all of it, it will get hot because it's going around and around. And that's a no-no. Although we do have some safety built into the system that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. But before I talk too much about the safety, I want to back this down and find out what medium and low will do for me. What we're going to do now is we're going to take this valve, instead of being on high, let's put it to medium, straight up to medium. Okay, now I've opened up number 2 route. Number 2 route now is opened up. I've got that opened up now. Now I have a regulator sitting here for, say, 400 pounds of pressure for carpet cleaning. I'm on medium, and this regulator sitting here is set for about 400 pounds of pressure. Well, if now this regulator didn't get to open up because remember it was set at 1500 psi. I got two holes in that block. One guy's pushing 15 and one is pushing 4. The weaker one's going to let go first. The high one never got a chance to open up because the weaker one down here opened up and held this pressure in this block to 400 pounds of pressure. If I have 400 pounds of pressure out here at my tool now, I won't put out as much as I would have if I'd been at 1,500 pounds. In this case, it would be about 1.5 gallons. About 1.5 gallons of water will be subjected onto the carpet per minute. That means how much is bypassing then through my bypass regulator, up through here and back down to the bottom of the block. Pump is always pumping 5. I'm using 1.5 gallons. What's left over? 3.5. So in this case, now the regulator's bypassing 3.5. I put 3.5 back in to come up short a little bit, and it come up short just exactly the amount that I put on the carpet. So it pulls out 1.5 gallons a minute of soaping water to make the pump happy again. See, now I'm beginning to be redundant. I'm beginning to, and I could really get redundant by going one more. Now if I switch my regulator, selector valve, down to low, I've shut this one out of the system. Hey, this 1,500 is still here, but now I've adjusted my, what is that number, C? Got the knob on it? C10. C10. I've adjusted C10 for 200 pounds of pressure. This time, with 200 pounds of pressure, I'm not going to put out 1.5 gallons anymore, am I? Because I'm not pushing so hard. I'm only putting out maybe 1 gallon. Well, then how much is bypassing through the bypass regulator? 4. 4 and 1 is still 5, and the pump is still happy. Now, the only thing I haven't mentioned, the 2 things I haven't mentioned in this, one of them is, let's go back to this valve here. I've left this valve all this time in straight up to off, meaning no water could go that way or no water could go that way. But now if I turn it to, say, warm up, let's see where the water would go if I go to warm up. Goes out of here, goes into this vacuum tube. There's a hose going from this the bottom of this valve going down under here, and goes into this tube right here. This is a vacuum tube. If I open this wide open, this 5 gallons a minute now is going, where's it going to go? It's going to go into this tube, and if there's suction on that tube, where's it going to go? It'll suck it up into the waste tank, right? If I have the lid off like I have it now, it would just flat run out the front of the machine. Well, why would we have that? What would be the features of having warm-up? I can think of at least 4 different reasons for having warm-up. One for which the word implies, because you remember earlier I mentioned something about a water flow switch? The heater won't come on unless water's flowing. Well, I made water flow, and I'm standing in front of the machine. I'm not 2 flights up, 6 apartments back trying to clean the carpet. I'm here in front of the machine. I can make water flow. I can preheat the water and warm up before I go upstairs. Number 2, I can ensure that the heater is working before I go 2 flights up, 6 apartments back to find out, oh, I forgot to turn the heater switch on, or oh, I forgot to do that, or I forgot to turn the thermostat up, I forgot to do that. Well, you can do that right here while you're standing in front of the machine if you use your warm-up mode of operation. Another one. This machine is brand new. Those coils are brand new. It's like going out and buying a brand new iron skillet. If you leave water sitting in that iron skillet overnight, what happens to the water in that iron skillet? It turns a murky brown or rusty color, don't it? Do y'all want that rusty color stuff to come down the hose, out of the tubes, down the hose, and onto white carpet and clean? I want to go to warm up, and I want to flush all that 125 feet of tube out and get rid of it and not get it onto the carpet. Now, this is only basically true for a brand new machine. Now, after you've had the machine for a few weeks, a few hundred hours maybe, or a couple hundred hours, you will start to build up inside those coils a calcium deposits or mineral deposits that separates the metal from the water. And that the situation not nearly as predominant later on as it is right now. But with your brand new machine, be sure to go to warm up each time before you start. You'll find out it'll get better and better and better. Up until the time when you build up too much deposits inside the coils and begin to get a restriction. Now, if I switch this wide open to warm up and I still have a lot of pressure showing on my gauge, there's a pretty good idea, a pretty good situation that I may have a scale buildup in the coils. So normally by watching your gauge when you go to warm up, I can, or if I even took this connector, if I took this connector completely off of the machine, there'd be nothing holding the water back unless there was a buildup in the coils. If there was a buildup in the coils, then I would say, hey, I still got pressure showing on the gauge. Man, it's still showing pressure. Something's holding the water back. It's like the old, one illustration I like to do is, you got a garden hose hooked onto your water faucet, and you got a T connector with a gauge right in the middle of your garden hose somewhere along the way. But the end is wide open and just pouring out onto the grass. Your pressure gauge would probably show 0 pressure because nothing holding it back. The birds hit the windshield of your truck during the day, and you decide to wash the windshield off before I start driving. You pick up the hose, and suddenly you begin to push on the hose to create pressure to make the bird stuff go away from the windshield. Your gauge begin to climb. The harder you push, the higher it climbs. So again, this tells you pretty much if you had pressure, there's something inside the machine that's holding the pressure back. Now the thing we haven't done is, and I do want to get you up, and this is going to be hard to do here with the everybody walking around the machine, but we'll try it. We need to look. We've been talking about the machine and where all these things are. We need to look at the machine now and follow our roadmap that we've been doing and see if we can locate all these items.
Where's the water pump?
Water pump is this.
It's here.
It's got the pulley operated, clutch operated pump. Do that now then? I'm going to move my chair and I'm going to get us up and around and get some of this stuff back off the floor here.
Oh, there. This is a holding.
Okay, now, when I turn on my garden hose down here, you know, we looked at our, you know, we've turned it on. We send water through here. If you follow the hose through, you'll see it come into this water holding tank. You see that? Can you see that okay? And it's going to fill, keep filling this tank until the flow says that's enough. The tank is full of water. Now, you may notice inside the tank, you may notice some coils in there.
That's the heat coil.
No, that's a cooling coil.
Oh, okay.
That's oil cooling coil. We run the hot oil, and now it may heat the water. It may heat the water a little bit, but we don't really consider this a heating. But if it knocks the chill off the water by 10 degrees, well, that's 10 degrees of heating got for free. But we don't push that as a heating device. What we take the oil out of the engine, run it through this cold water, and return it back to the engine. That makes your engine run much cooler. Okay, you got it. That's just a little feature we come up with many years ago. We confirmed with Kohler that it was okay to do this. We didn't jump out here and do this on our own without Kohler's.
Who's Cole?
The builder of the engine.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right.
Okay, sorry about that. Good question. Sometimes I just assume too much. Okay, anyway, don't worry about this in what we're doing right now. But anyway, I've got this tank that's filled up. And if you'll notice, there's a hose coming out of this tank that goes over, and if you follow it through, follow it through, it will go to this number 7 that I'm talking about on the class. By the way, it will unsnap from number 7. Okay, so anyway, I can draw the water, the pump will draw the water out of the tank through number 7 and into this bottom of this block. Now, I have a tank right here that's filled with solution. And it's hard to see it with all these stuff on it, but there's a hose coming out of that tank. And if I follow it out of this tank, it'll come up, it'll go through a meter, and it will go all the way back to number 6 on this cluster block.
That's from the solution.
That's from your solution. You come out of the solution tank, go up through the meter, and through that white tube, and you come over to the bottom, and that's where the soap and water, I'll use the word soap. I'll use the word soap for a lack of a better term. It could be rinsing surfactant or whatever product you chose to use. Okay, solution, there you go. I like that's a good one. Anyway, the two gets mixed, okay, and this pump sucks it out through the filter and into the pump. You remember kind of how we did that? Okay, and then with the valves, it allows the water to be sucked in, and then the discharge valves allows the water to be pushed out, and it goes into number 1.
There's 3 of those pumps in here?
There's 3 of those plungers. You can almost count them, 1, 2, 3. We cut the pump in 2, and it showed you one of them.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, now, so the water goes into this block, and if I turn this valve here to high, your selector valve to high, this regulator and this regulator are no longer in the system. They're out. They're not being used at all.
Okay, question.
Yes,
When you're saying high, what is high really meaning to us?
high pressure.
Okay, so that's the strongest,
That's the strongest pressure.
that's the strongest pressure we're gonna get when we're in the
Exactly.
field. Okay.
Good question. Okay, so now I don't have medium pressure, I don't have low pressure, even select. I shut them off. I turn this valve to the off position. The only one I've got is this one.
So, for example, if I'm doing some wool carpet, I want to put that on like low. I would take my pressure down from there. As opposed
You could,
To,
I don't know how much pressure,
well, just saying if I'm doing something that needs low pressure.
or upholstery, Cleve.
Exactly.
Upholstery, that's, I like to use, I don't know what is wool?
Wool, you know,
Natural fiber.
Yeah, but I mean, how much
it's
pressure?
low pressure.
Can you work with 400 pounds of pressure with
Low
wool?
pressure, low
You could, but it's pushing it. You preferably want to use about 3 to 350
And
at
we-
the highest.
And I'm gonna show you just a minute how I could leave it on medium and readjust this if I wanted to. I'd rather do it that way. But,
So that's basically. But you're saying we don't need to mess with this valve. There's somewhere else we can adjust it.
well, I can, these are preset.
Okay.
This one is preset for about 1,500 pounds of pressure. That's the high one.
This is more is regulating how much water you're actually putting out per minute.
Exactly. Whether it's,
So to
2.5 gallons a minute.
adjust your heat, you would use.
Okay, so this is regulating the amount of water as opposed to the pressure of the water.
Well, the pressure, the two go together. The harder I push to a same size jet,
Right.
harder I push, the more water I will subject onto the current.
Right.
So if I wanted, we'll leave this on high for a minute and say, I don't have medium, I don't have low.
Okay.
And I have my high set for, say, 1,400 or 1,500 pounds of pressure. I might use this for pressure washing. I have a gun to wash my truck with, or
Right.
concrete sidewalk or what have you. And I can adjust this pressure regulator and make it lower if 1,500 was too much. And you didn't like, see, we set these for specific values, and each individual buying the machine can always set high, medium, or low to what he or she
Okay,
did.
all right.
But anyway, we're on high pressure now, and this is out of the system. So we're bypassing, if I was using, the example I used, I caused about 2.5 to be sprayed onto the truck that I'm washing. I bypassed about 2.5. I pulled in 2.5 to keep the pump happy again through, yeah, it's 5. 2.5 was the 5 that we discussed. Okay, now, if I turn the wand off and take a coffee break, the machine is still running, I'm bypassing 5 gallons, and it's under pressure part of the way through the pump and back up to the regulator before it relieves it, and it's kind of going around and around. This will begin to get hot, this will begin to get hot, and we might damage the pump if I took a coffee break with the machine still running. Except, and I'd still like for you to kind of keep that idea in mind, and it'd be better that the safety valve didn't have to save your life. But we have built into this, see this little cross here? We put a little guy in here that said, how hot's the water? How hot's the water? If this water gets up to, now again, this is way before the heater. It didn't get hot because it's going through it's getting hot because of kinetic energy, because the pump was pushing it under pressure.
Right.
Okay? So after a while, it would, if I took a long coffee break, it would get up to an unsafe thing and might damage the pump. But this little guy says, hey, I think I'm up to about 145 degrees, which is still safe for the pump. But as soon as this water, at this point, hits 145 degrees, it snaps open, and looky where it shoots the water to.
To the dump tank.
Well, now the pump said, wait a minute, I lost some water. I gotta have some fresh water. It pulls fresh water back to hold it and maintain that 5 gallons we've been talking about.
Okay.
And in about, 30 seconds, this regulator said, hey, I'm safe again. It snapped shut. And now I'm back to this. So I extended my coffee break, and all of a sudden it got to 145 again, snaps open, discharges the hot water, and that's a safety device that's built into the
So
system.
during that coffee break, we should have put the machine on warm up, right?
Well, now, yeah, you could have, but then you come out here and you got a tank full of water. So,
Or just turn the
I
pump
don't
off.
turn the pump off would have been
Oh,
better.
turn the
Idle
pump
it
off.
down.
Yeah, you could, if you want to keep the machine running, you could let it idle and turn the pump and the heater off. And
That's all.
I know I'm exaggerating. I'm sort of giving you
Yeah, but in practicality, you're not gonna do
Boy,
it.
yeah,
So
in fact, you're right here, you're going as fast as you can, you're not taking
In the
the
middle of a carpet cleaning, you're probably not gonna stop to take a coffee break.
No, but like you might be doing something, you might have to deal with some of the hoses for some
Yeah.
reason or another.
I tell all these younger guys how you could get distracted. You're out here in carpet, and some real nice looking lady comes walking in. You lose your head about this time, and you forget that the machine is running, and you said you got something else on your mind. And well, I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit there too, but you see, the younger guys can relate to that. Old folks don't know. Okay, a little novelty now. Okay, now if I switch this to medium now, see. By the way, somebody said, how can I keep up with which regulator switch? Which regulator am I pointing at now?
The top.
And it says medium right there. That's medium, guys. If I switch it down here and it says low, which regulator am I looking at now? Now, if I'm not looking at either one of those, I have to use my imagination. Eyes over there. That's how you know which one is which. High always has to be the higher of the three when you're 7 up. High always you can't say, I'll make this and high and this. No, it won't work that way. This always has to be the higher of the three. Now here's the reason why. I come up to medium. How many knows the story about the little Dutch boy that saved the country? You do, don't you? Most of us older guys know that story. You're not that old.
Sticking his finger in the
Dike?
dike?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He knows it. Do you know it?
No.
You know it?
I heard it.
Yeah, okay. So you must be a little older than he is, so. Now it's older guys. Once upon a time, you know the story's got to begin with once upon a time. Little Dutch boy over in Holland was out in the tulip fields or whatever they grow over there. You know, the dikes here, they're below sea level, and they have the dikes around the fields. And he's out there in the tulip fields one day, and he sees water pouring through a little hole in the dike. And he thinks to himself, you know what? Pretty soon, this is going to erode away, and this dike is going to cave in, and there goes Holland or the tulip field or whatever. So anyway, he's a brave little boy. He sits there, and he puts his hand or thumb in a hole in the dike, and he stops the water. But he said, I can't leave, because if I leave, so the next morning, or late in the night, they found this little Dutch boy saving the country, and they came out. He became a very, very famous little Dutch boy because he stopped the hole. Well, that's kind of what these are. This little Dutch girl, his little Dutch boy. Little Dutch boys are a little stronger than Dutch girls. He's sitting up here at 1,500 pounds, pushing 1,500 pounds against that hole in the dike. But here's a little Dutch girl. She's only pushing 400. Well, he never even had a chance to open up. He opened up and relieved the pressure. Now, if I'm on medium and I take a coffee break, see where the bypass hose goes? Or the bypass hose goes right back through that cross. And again, I still can monitor how hot the water may be getting while I'm machining on dispensing water. And then if I go to low, I'm getting redundant now, but again, it goes, whether I'm high, medium, or low, they all go by the little cross, and they all get monitored by the safety device. Okay, now, here's the other little thing we need to do. We've talked about all this. Now we need to get out of here, and we come out. Remember, we come out at number 9 on the cluster, and here's the water flow switch. This thing I'm touching with my hand, if you need to get around where you really see it, feel free to do so. You might need to look at it from his point of view because you can see it a little better. It has a gray cord coming out of it.
This is the temperature.
No, it's a water flow switch.
What's the water flow switch?
It only monitors, when water's flowing, a set of contacts inside the switch will close. When water's not flowing, they're open. That's in our next circuit, in our next thing. Okay, the water comes in, goes through the switch, comes out, and it goes down to these heater coils. It goes around and around and around and around through the heater coils. Now, I'm going to have one of you at a time to come over here, and I want to show you where it comes out. Whichever, you're over there. I want you to get down real low, maybe on your knees, and find that big brass block I'm pointing at.
Yeah.
And you got two hoses coming out. One comes to pressure out, the other comes to the three-way warm-up valve. Okay? Let somebody else take a look at it now.
And what's that copper wire coming out to? Is that like a
That's
ground
a
wire or
heat
something?
sensor.
That's Z sensor?
Uh-huh.
All right.
Did you get it spotted? Okay, and one more. Okay, it's right down here. You'll see the two big hoses coming out of there. One comes to pressure out, the other goes to warm up. We have heat sensing devices in there we'll pick up on our heater circuits in just a little while. So one of them goes to warm up, but if it's straight up off, it can't go right, it can't go left, it can't, the only way up would be out, pressure out. Okay, I got one more thing, then we're gonna take a little break. I wanna show you how a pressure regulator works. So I need to have you back at your seats again, and we'll talk about a pressure regulator. Remember, there's two of them on the machine that are exactly alike. This one here and this one here. They are exactly alike, and we need to know basically how they work. That's just an old one I will show you in a minute. So I'm going to tear a regulator apart so you'll see how they work. Remember, the water's coming in here, and it's bypassing out of here. So anyway, the regulator works like this. On this shaft, there's 9 sets of Belleville springs, and except there's little flat washers here. But these Belleville springs, they're cupped washers, and they go together in pairs. Take them, and when you put them together in pairs, you can actually see how many pairs there. There should be 9 sets of those things, and you put them together like turning one plate up and one plate down, one plate up, one plate down. That makes a spring. If I was really strong, I could pinch this together. I'm not really strong. But anyway, that's the basic idea of how the spring works, Belleville springs. Now, the way they work, the way you get your pressure is when you put this together, well, before I put it together, see a little tiny hole in the end of that? That's where the water's trying to get into that hole. And the only way it can get in there is when water pressure builds up enough to push this spring back. Now, you're strong, put your thumb against that hole tonight. Now, don't let me overdo you. I got the leverage over you. I got the leverage because I don't care how hard you push unless you can go over 1,500 psi with your thumb, and I don't think you will. But anyway, this is the way the thing works. The harder you crank down on this, the more you compress those springs, the more pressure it takes to relieve, to get that water to bypass out of this bypass, whether it's a high, medium, or low. That's the basic idea how this thing works. Now, these regulators, they're good, they last for years, but if one of them begins to drip a little water out of the thing, there's a repair kit that can be had for, I don't know, 10 or 15 bucks, something like that. Now, the regulator's over $100. That's my attention getter. You can let it keep dripping if you want to, and you can replace it for $100 or something. Or you can use your little O-ring kit and replace it right away. Let me show you what will happen if you don't replace it. Well, first off, let's see what a good one looks like first. The area I want you to look at is about 1 inch back, and look at that little wall where this O-ring fits against that wall. Just pass it on down through there. Now, if you don't replace it right away, here's what's going to happen to you. Now, no ring kit ain't going to do you any good now. Yeah, don't spend your $12 or $15 on that one. It's wasted. It dripped too long. It eroded away. But anyway, that's what can happen if you don't, so, yeah, that's the old one. That's the wrong one. Told you my macular degeneration had me. Okay. Yeah, if I put it together. Thank you. Okay, that's how your regulators work, except the low pressure regulator is just a valve. A lot of people say, well, I can adjust my load to anything I want to do, but it's not a spring type regulator. It's just a screw type valve that just shuts the thing off. And you get big drops, and it's good for your 200-pound to 300-pound upholstery cleaning and all that, because you don't have to worry about that. But if you try to make it work for 200, 300, 400 pounds, you'll get big spikes in pressure when you undo the wand, when you turn your wand off, and when you trigger it, it'll drop way down. And it's just one designed for your higher pressures, your low pressure. So just use your low pressure for your upholstery cleaning. Now that's a quick run through. We need to take a break, but I got one thing I want to cover before break. Do we have anything to write with, like a magic marker or a chalk thing? Oh, okay. He's got one. Okay, he got them over here. I didn't know where. I'm going to set up, just so you understand a little bit more about what's happening with this, how much water you're really using, ratio of water to soap and all that. It's good. A lot of people still don't have any idea how much water, how much soap they're using per hour and all that. I want to set up a little scenario for you. This would never ever happen to you, but let's just say that I turned on the tool, I turned on my wand, and never turned it off for 1 solid hour. I turned this thing on for 1 solid hour, never turned it off. And I'm cleaning carpet. So here's a little scenario. I'm going to kind of write it up here so you can think about it a little bit. I'm going to say the tool on for 1 hour. 100%. Tool is on for 100% of the time. The question is, fill in the blank. Oh, we're doing carpet cleaning, but we're doing carpet cleaning, by the way. Okay. What we're going to base our value on? How much? Okay. Let me. I know that I only mentioned it one time, and it's really. Pardon me? No, that was for pressure washing.
300, 5 times 60.
But it's all not coming through because of the.
No. How much water do you start?
Reserve. You said 1.5. 1.5 times 30. That's 45.
90.
Or times 60. My bad.
90. There you go. There's the value of
1.5 times
90 GPH now. I went from gallons a minute, 1.5 minute to that. Okay, now that's about, if you did that, that's how much water would have went through the machine. That's how much water would have hit the carpet. And when I said flood, some of it might have been soap or solution, cleaning solution. Okay, now let's change this thing and say the tool was on 50% of the time. Okay, what would this value turn out to be? 45. Okay. Now let's go back. Okay. And if I had, I probably should have mentioned this. Let's say this, going back to the 100, going back up to the 100 again, at the 100, let's say that I would have had my meter set for 4 gallons per hour. We would have actually, we had 86 and 4 would have been the 90, right? If I'd been using 4 gallons of solution, I would have been using 86 water. If they'd been set on 4, I don't know whether you'd ever go that high or not. You might, but anyway, it's just what would happen. Now let's go back to the 50, and now what would I have over here? What would that be?
3 and 2.
I'd have, instead of having 45, I'd have, what, 43? And 2 is a 45. Because that was only open half the time, remember? Tool was only half, even though every time you triggered it, jumped up to 4, but it was only on half the time, so you would only use that. The reason I bring that up is, a lot of people go, well, how long is this going to last me? You know, I got 8 gallons of solution in there. How long is it going to last me? If you run 50% of the time and you use 2 gallons per hour, you get a lot of cleaning with 1 tank full of solution. The other place where this comes into play, a lot of people say, I'm going to put a water softener on my machine. I'm going to run my water through a water softener. And the caller going to ask the guy, well, how much water are you using? I don't know. Well, with this, you can come up with some pretty darn good values of how much water you're actually using. So excuse my hieroglyphics there, but I think you can figure out what I'm trying to say from that. What we need to do now is take about 5 or 10 minute break. Restrooms, coffee bar, wherever, whatever you'd like to do for about 5 or 10 minutes. Let's get up and stretch our legs a little bit.
Last night too, I was like, Terrace in April.
It was just you and Nate? Where's the lead?
Oh, I don't know about this week, but I know Pat told me last week I made 10 hours overtime. And that was 2.5 hours overtime. So it's like 13 hours overtime there. I'm just checking it up today. It's like 13 hours overtime. Yeah, I made 10 hours one week. 10 hours extra, 50 hours is one week. Huh? 11. Just finished. So I'm this 6.
We got 1%.